Most empires are not destroyed by failure. They are destroyed by success. The moment people stop struggling, they stop adapting. In today's video, we are going to talk about why countries in general sense that are winners eventually becomes weak. And the main point of this subject is that countries who win eventually has this problem of, the saying as goes, hard times produce strong man produce easy times produce weak man, and weak man produce hard times, and it cycle continues like this. And most of the time these hard times that fund these big empires happens because of needing to adapt to certain things that are happening geopolitically. Now, hard times generally enforce discipline on society, and success removes the need for discipline, because the more successful you get, the more comfortable you can become, and the more comfortable you can become, the more you don't need discipline. And I have a couple of examples on this, and one of them is generally rich empires. Let's say Byzantine Empire, and I think this goes for America too. And this is going to be a little bit of controversial, but if there is no poor people in your country, then you will have a very hard time having manpower for your army. Because if people are comfortable, then they are not going to pick something that requires a lot of discipline and a lot of organization, a lot of training, because they think to themselves that it is pointless. Why would you leave your comfort zone and go and do something that it requires a lot of discipline? And generally speaking, societies that get richer and richer have this problem, and because of this problem we are actually trying to invent robots that will fight for us, and AIs that will fight for us. I think that most of you at this point know that America has signed with Cloud and with ChatGPT to be used in war. These things are not these things are controversial, yes, but these things are actually smart moves, because I think they are aware that they are in this comfort zone, that they can pull their people out of this comfort zone and make them sign in to become soldiers. And they need an alternative to soldiers that are made from flesh and bone. And generally speaking, military becomes more and more bureaucratic in these kind of winner countries, that they win their wars, they win their tests in their geopolitical situations, and they become the winners for their times. And because of these wins, they eventually become more and more bureaucratic rather than organized and disciplined, and focus on success gets downgraded to focus on bureaucracy, and military becomes a place where people generally just spends time because they didn't have anything, rather than something of a something that produces some kind of result. And elites generally in these kind of countries, elites tend to care about luxury than survival. And you might be like, but elites always do that. And that is partially true, but in the end of the day, if you look at older generations, when I say older, like 1960s and such times, and you look at their elites, you can see that their entire purpose wasn't just, being rich and having luxury, going on yachts, and not caring about these things. And I want to point out something too. In real life, there was a social agreement between elites and countries, and this social agreement was the fact that you have money, and people need certain things like education and hospital needs, and you would pay, you would make investments and pay for these kind of things, and we would give your name to maybe the university, we would maybe give your name to the hospital, or make some kind of statue, or we would do things that would make you immortalized, so that rich people, elites, would spend their money on infrastructure so that they would be basically immortalized by historical facts. But today's rich people, today's elites, doesn't need to do that, because healthcare got to the point of such a success, that healthcare becomes so successful that people's lifespan getting longer and longer. Like, people are saying that people are going to live for like 150 years because of healthcare getting more and more better, and this will continue with healthcare improving, meaning that elites actually do not need to immortalize themselves, because they are going to not go they think that they are not going to die. And honestly, that does look like that they do be like, the current technological situation does make it look like elites are not going to die. In Crusader Kings 3, these kind of things can be seen with long periods of peace, and armies becoming more expensive, and rulers not focusing on warfare and generally focusing on development, and eventually getting attacked by countries that they didn't expect to be attacked by. And this personally happened in my own campaigns too. Now, a starving kingdom learns to fight, a rich kingdom learns to consume. And this is an important fact, because if you do not have any kind of people who have what can we call as hunger, not this doesn't have to be physically being hungry, but athletes talk about hunger and such. It's more like that. And if you do not have these kind of things, then you are a very successful to you are very open for invasion that you didn't expect, you didn't come see that it's coming. And the most dangerous moment for an empire is when it starts believing that it cannot lose. And you can see this in America currently, that they have this belief that they cannot lose any war, and because of this they are very ignorant, they are very overconfident, and they are arrogant. I don't know if you guys read papers, but I'm going to summarize a paper that United States of Army has released about basically comparison between China and America, and what they did is basically a number audit, and they were talking about whether or not attacking China would be sensible, and if some kind of war between China and America started, what would happen. In the first 30 minutes of the war, in the paper that like United States of Army released, in the first 30 minutes of the war, they say that there will be 300,000 casualties. But if you look at the current politicians, they don't seem to be talking about that. They don't seem to be being like, oh, we have like an actual rival when it comes to military. No, they are still very arrogant, they are still very overconfident and thinking to themselves that they can do anything. And this is caused by generally just winning too much. And I say this a lot and a lot, but if you win too much, eventually you're going to be like, oh, I just can't lose. And that is bad, that is very bad, and you need to overcome this idea with humbleness. And if you do not do this, you will eventually be struck down by a foe that will basically shock you with his capabilities. And you can see these kind of things with leaders thinking they are unbeatable. You can see these kind of things with these kind of leaders ignoring warnings from people of expertise. And you can see that these kind of things in politicians through underestimating their enemies. And if you see these kind of signs, it become a fact that that these kind of empires have become too arrogant, and it's going to be eventually corroded down to either a civil war or either it's something going to happen. Just something is eventually bound to happen. And there are historical empires that can be given as example to this, like late Roman Empire and British Empire, currently overextension, overextension like it's their job, and late Ottoman Empire's stagnation. And these kind of historical examples exist on history by a huge margin. I'm not going to give every single one of them, but I think it's very clear that eventually an empire comes to this period of stagnation or arrogance, and generally ignoring signs that warns them. And this is kind of a god complex, because of you look at your history, your own country's history, and you're like never been beaten, and or you say to yourself that you've never been beaten and such, and you look at these things and you would think to yourself that you are unbeatable and such. These kind of thinkings are basically god complexes, and this happens because of, again, being too overconfident. Yes, but this is a part of our actual biology. If you do not have any kind of struggle, eventually you are going to be thinking to yourself that you are God. And if you had a lot of struggles and you overcome these struggles, then that is going to reinforce that you are kind of a godly being. And you can see these kind of things in human beings, and these human beings being constantly thinking, acting and talking like as if they have this godlike authority over human beings. And I don't think I need to tell who acts like this, but I think you have a person coming into your mind. Now, generally, comfort changes human behavior, and that's because the generation that built the empire survives hardships. The next generation inherits comfort, and this comfort causes these human behaviors to change, and eventually thinking that stability is natural. And I am here to say that existence itself, generally just existence, is very chaotic, and stability is human product rather than existing around to nature. This is not natural thing to exist. Stability is created by us, and people that raised in stability think that this is some part of nature, and this is the how it goes for everybody, and it's not. And these kind of things generally cause people to have weaker political will, and lower sacrifice tolerance and entitlement. These people think to themselves that they are entitled to jobs. They think that they are entitled to be giving everything there is to be given to them. They think that money, jobs, and generally success is some kind of entitlement rather than a product of discipline and training, education, and such. And lower sacrifice tolerance means that if you ask them that, hey, even if you are right, even if you are like, hey, we have this enemy that needs to be fought, and this enemy is actually wrong, with proof, with all the proof that is needed, and you show them this, thinking that they are going to help you, but these kind of people are not going to help you at all, because as I said, they have weaker political will. They care about things that things that are like luxurious products and such, more than the political things that happens. They might be caring about certain things, they might be saying certain ideological things to you, but if you look at their real life, especially even if you're some kind of millionaire and you offer them to be offered them to successfully implement their ideology or give them a lot of money, I personally think they're going to pick money. And even though they believe that their ideology is correct, they're going to pick money because, as I said, they feel like they're entitled to this. To them, that money is like, I should have already had this, rather than, oh, I'm lucky to have this. And these kind of things cause a lot of problems, because these kind of things causes succession problems, and succession is very important, because if you do not have young people that you can give the country to rule them to, when I say young, I don't mean 20s, I mean generally like 30s and 40s. That's young for political systems. And if you do not have people that you can trust with these kind of things, that's a very bad sign for an empire, or generally any country, because that means that your younger generations has, again, weaker political will, meaning that there is no, like, you are having a hard time to find a person to rule the country. And these kind of things are overlooked, but these kind of things causes people in political positions stress, because if they can't find someone to replace themselves, they think that they have to stay on that place, they have to stay there on that throne. And these kind of things combined with arrogance and overconfidence and God complex, I think you know where that kind of thing would go to. It would go to someone posting a photo of themselves as Jesus Christ, just just something that happens naturally with human way of thinking. If I gave you that amount of power, if you're someone who constantly criticize Donald Trump, you are correct to criticize him, but if I gave you that amount of power to you, you would do that too, because that's how it goes for biological human beings. You are in this box of what we can call as your biology, and you're allowed to roam in this box because your walls are set, or they are already set by your biology. Now the empire stops asking how do we survive and starts asking how do we stay comfortable. And you might be like, what's that mean? And I would come to the part of this subject that very important to things. Generally speaking, institutions stop protecting the state and start protecting privilege. And generally speaking, privilege of elite people who are in positions of power, people who are have luxuries, and these people focus on how do we stay comfortable? Like, how do we protect our wealth rather than, oh, we have these enemies, we have these common enemies, and we should do infrastructure buildings or military expansions rather than focusing on these kind of things. They focus on keeping their wealth, in their hand, and these kind of things are very very bad. They are very very bad, because if it has come to this point, it's basically a very big sign of, oh, okay, this country is done. That's a very big sign that the country will eventually go down, because you cannot fool human biology. That's just not possible. And you can see these kind of things by looking at rich people's lives and how they live their life, and when it comes to their businesses, what do they focus on? Do they focus on expanding their business, or do they focus on keeping their business keep going on? And more than that, you can see this basically how what happened with Epstein too. And they are trying to cover up Epstein, because rather than take accountability, because they are not focused on their survival, they have focused on how to stay in this comfortable zone they themselves created for themselves, because they are living like gods. And if you live like a god, I don't think you would want it to be gone. And these kind of things are generally can be seen through corruption, luxury spendings, political infighting, and inefficient bureaucracy. If a country has a lot of political infighting and polarization, like normally speaking, human beings are not divided into two political parties. They generally tend to spread in a very wider range of political parties. There are central Alps, meaning that they are central but authoritarian a little bit, and they are, let's say they are central but they are authoritarian a little bit. Maybe say they are central and right wing. Maybe they are moderately right wing and but not extremist, not central right wing. And these kind of things go along for a lot. And generally speaking, that if a country come to the position where there is only two countries and everybody has to pick sides, and that's a very bad sign. That alone is a very bad sign. And if a political infighting happening, and while it happening, there is the bureaucracy itself is inefficient, that's VRAPS. Like that's basically gone. That's a very big sign that basically corrosion not just started, but it's already started to take effects. Like this corrosion that is happening on infrastructure and generally everything that concerns a country has started to moderately corrode many of the things. And these kind of things are very important, because if there is a political infighting, that means there are rivalries. And if there are rivalries, there is supposed to be something be built upon, because how you fight, how do you fight in politics? You do it with gaining people's votes, right? And how do you gain people's votes? Right now, generally speaking, social media campaigns. But normally how you would do this is you would basically build infrastructure on the local parties you won, and you build infrastructure and causing people to vote for your party more and more. And generally speaking, rivalries is a good thing, and rivalry going up and up is a good thing. But if inefficient bureaucracy and political infighting happening at the same time, that's the biggest sign of the country basically going down. Now, The people with less comfort usually adapts faster, and you can see this in today's societies too. Certain countries like China, Taiwan, and Japan, these countries went through very bad, very crushing periods of time, and after these periods of time, maybe South Korea too, yeah, South Korea too, and these societies became what we can call as hungry, and these hungry societies innovate faster than comfortable ones. And I don't know if you guys seen, but Trump tried to take the industry that was out in India and in Japan, in China and such, tried to take these industries back to America, and it failed because these are innovations, and you can't if you are not the one that is doing the innovation anymore, it's basically pointless to get the factories. And disciplined outsiders, generally speaking, adapts faster, and since they adapt faster, their military tends to adapt faster too. And you can actually see this on Iran. And even though Iran started very bad to this period of time with 12 days war and basically losing the war, they adapted really fast, and as you can see, they are basically winning. And one more thing is they are desperate too. They don't have any other option besides get completely basically conquered and or win. And since this desperation exists, they were much more disciplined, and they adapted faster, and they innovated faster too. And because of these things, I think Iran was going to win, and it seems they are winning too. There are historical angles for this too. There are nomads versus settled empires, and the biggest, probably the biggest example is my own history. As you know, as Turks, we existing around here and traveled eventually to come and invade these lands and invade Iran and found Seljuk Empire. And when we invaded Persian empires in here, they basically, it was a very crushing defeat for these empires, because we were adapting faster, we were learning faster, because nomads generally lived in very brutal conditions, and our society was actually very welcoming to both genders, because it was brutal, there was no lands around in here to basically do farming and such. It pushed you to be a very welcoming, I guess welcoming society, because you needed to act like a one single force and go from here to basically in here to Anatolia. That's what you needed to do. And Seljuk came to be because they basically used their nomadic advantages to themselves, and basically eventually formed Seljuk Empire. And the Iranian folks around here couldn't defend themselves against the much more adapted, much more faster, much more open to innovation, because of their desperation. And I would say the same happened with Seljuk. As you may or may not know, eventually Mongol Empire big enough and basically caused the fall of Seljuk Empire. And the same principle, which is winners become weak, eventually happened with my own country, historical country too. Now, empires rarely I couldn't say that, sorry. Empires rarely die when they are struggling to survive. They die after success convinces them survival is guaranteed. I hope you guys liked this video. I hope you guys subscribe. I hope you guys click on the notification. I hope you guys have the best day in the world.